And away you go.
All right. Good morning and welcome. My name is Cheryl Babin. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Mr. Rick Gilson, and we are designers of professional learning at the Alberta Professional Learning Consortium, or the Consortium, if you prefer. We are really excited to be here with you today to talk about instructional practices that are really powerful and essential for making social studies come alive. We want to do the very best that we can for the students in your care, and that's what we hope to achieve today. So welcome. Thank you for joining us either on this Zoom this morning or for catching the recording a little bit later. We've got materials for you at throughout and at the end, so we want you to be able to capture those and take them with you. And then we also hope to use those materials as springboards to work elbow to elbow with you throughout the year to try to really make this happen in your classes. So again, thank you. Hope that you've had a great summer. Hi, Andrea Barnes. Nice to see you there. Let's get going. Here we go.
Okay, to begin with, we'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. And over the past little while, I've worked at trying to personalize that and shared mine with Cheryl, and we've kind of made this a partner project here. We were both born in Calgary on Treaty 7 territory, a treaty signed September 22nd, 1877 at Blackfoot Crossing between the Crown and the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Stoney Nakoda, and Tsuut'ina nations. We have lived in other treaty lands in Alberta and Canada. We acknowledge that this land is also the historical and present-day homeland of the Métis in present-day Alberta. We recognize that the rights, relationships, and responsibilities established by these treaties predate our arrival. As a result, we understand that we live with inherited responsibilities to learn, act, and reconcile, to uphold the spirit of these agreements across the remainder of our lives. We honor the lives, knowledge, and enduring presence of the original peoples of this land. We commit to ongoing learning, to foster respectful relationships with Indigenous communities, and to translating this awareness into meaningful action, small and significant, toward reconciliation. And Cheryl, just a thought. I'll have to come back to it. Oops. David Robertson's new book on 52 Ways to Reconcile. We'll share that later.
Yeah, that's a great.
I got a classroom of social studies teachers here. I'll find it.
We will all be looking at that one. Thank you for the land acknowledgement. And I'd just like to take a moment to offer the opportunity for all of you to think about personalizing your land acknowledgements and really teaching your students why they might make them, how you might integrate them into your practice. In more than just at assemblies, we want to really weave it in as we can to make it part of what we do and really meaningful in terms of reconciliation. All right. So what we want to talk about today it's really about learning. And we know, all of us are here today because we know this, and we share this belief that when we are active participants in our learning, those are the moments that we remember. Those are the moments that make meaning, that hook on to prior knowledge. And so we're using the term do social studies. We do social studies, and it's not something that's done to us, something that we are passively receiving, or you know how that happens when sometimes our students don't catch what we throw out at them. It just seems to pass them by. So our goal today is to really attempt to find ways to do social studies. And so we invite you on the journey with us.
Now, as we work our way, what we really hope to do is to change the school conversation. So you're all familiar. I have 6 grown children, 7 grandchildren. With the, what you learn at school today, we kind of want to expand on that. What did you feel today? What did you do today? What did you see today? What did you share today? What did you learn today? And we're hopeful that by taking this approach and introducing the various steps, 6 of them, with you today, that we can change that conversation and people can kind of live and breathe what they're learning a little bit and have it kind of be imbued across their entire lived experience, from
Mhm.
littles all the way through to 67-year-olds standing in line to sign a petition.
Right. What did you do today that made you feel uncomfortable? What did you do today that made you excited? What happened today that made you wonder? So here we go. Mhm. The first one that we want to talk about is we take on roles. As teachers in active social studies classrooms, we want to remember that it's our opportunity to guide learners to take on roles to help them learn to consider varying perspectives. It's written in the front matter of the social studies, sort of the subject overview, but also we know that it helps to build empathy and it helps to support open-mindedness so that we can be critical thinkers. So taking on roles is something that we really want to encourage. And in the materials that we've created for you, we take the idea of roles and we've gone into curriculum and found an example from each grade, kindergarten through grade 6, where you might take a learning outcome or some of the cusps and have students take on roles. Now, we are not going to share all of those with you on the Zoom today, so we've decided to highlight one of those examples from each of these instructional strategies that are really powerful. So an example that we would like to share with you about taking on roles is to think about approaching social studies and the content as a historian, a geographer, a leader, or a storyteller. We want students to put themselves into the shoes of researchers or perhaps family members. We want them to be debaters and artists and thinkers and doers. We decided to share an example from grade 4 with you today. And the grade 4 example that we have for you comes from the organizing idea, time and place. Now, I know this text gets a little small. Hopefully, you're not watching us on your phone in your car. But the learning outcome that we chose around this organizing idea has a guiding question. How did colonies influence the formation of Canada? So we thought, okay, let's take the learning outcome. Students examine significant historical events that contributed to the formation of the country of Canada. So we are wondering if you might consider asking students to take on the roles of European explorers, Giovanni Caboto, Samuel de Champlain, investigating motivations. Why would they want to explore? And what does it mean to colonize? What happens when you go somewhere and there are already people and societies and communities living there? After learning about something like the treaties, like the two-row wampum, you could invite students to take on a role of an observer, or what would it be like witnessing or watching, writing about the royal proclamation. You could act these things out. We we also thought that in other grade 4 contexts, you could become fur trade participants, fathers of Confederation, French and British colonists, trying to get students to create scenarios or even tableaus where they have to act out. You could have some props or have students make props that represent different sort of costumes or ways that people would dress in that time. One caveat that we want to really express that Rick and I talked about at length actually was, the idea that you might invite Indigenous students to take on the roles of First Nations Métis peoples as intermediaries in the roles of within the context of the fur trade. We we really think that it's important that whenever you're taking on the role of a group, that it's done with the utmost of respect and integrity, really being careful to offer what that we're not acting like Indigenous people, for example, that we are asking Indigenous people what they would like to share or know about. And it's also important that if you are feeling uncertain about that, that you ask the leaders and the people your knowledge keepers and elders in your communities or in your areas, what they know about that context and what thoughts they might have. So we are definitely advocating for a respectful and a careful way to approach the idea of taking on roles. Rick, would you like to add anything to that?
Jasmine just asked a really good question. First off, I dropped the note that we have included on every grade in the We Take roles into the chat for everyone. And want to share with you that the document that we share at the end does have an example for each, but then we also have a page for each grade with examples for each of the 6 do strategies for each grade. So you'll have examples all the way through, including kindergarten. But Jasmine's question, what if we do not have Indigenous students? How can we best implement this role? I think Indigenous students is certainly one place we can focus on that. What if we have a very homogeneous classroom that has no students of color or no students of whatever we're talking about? How do we approach that? The answer would be respectfully. And the answer would be to look if there are opportunities to bring anybody else from the community into the room, or if there are other resources that you could use where you could read their story or share their story. And I said that wrong because I said the answer would, and I don't want to say the. I don't mean to imply like, okay, here's all the golden treasure. An answer might be that we look to resources that are available. As it relates particularly to Indigenous students and Indigenous learnings and ways, the APLC team in, I guess, Treaty 7 territory primarily have developed a great website that has motivated people down here in our area of the Blackfoot Nations to say, hey, we should be supplying some information for this website from a Blackfoot point of view as well, which is important. So there are those kinds of resources, and Cheryl's just dropped the website into the chat for everybody to take a look at. Great question, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to get students out of their desks and moving and putting their ideas and their minds into what might it be like in that situation, and what might be the conversations, how do we find out from primary sources and secondary sources what kinds of information we can add to our inquiry. But we also wanted to be really respectful of how we do that. Whenever you're looking at anything that is race-based or gender-based or anything that would sort of other a group of people or a person in your class, we want to make sure that we are doing it respectfully and with as much sensitivity as possible. There's so much literature that can help you, like in terms of children's books or video clips, even looking at things like the Heritage Minutes allows students to, I worked with one group whose students created their own Heritage Minutes to try to recreate moments in history. So you could have your students create a Heritage Minute where, the French and British colonists were transferring the territories and adapting new governance. What would that sound like? What would it be like? So in the chat, could you please think about your own grade for a moment? What kind of roles could you take on, or have you done in the past? You could even lean on previous curriculum, and let us know what kinds of roles you've had or could imagine your students taking on. Yeah, yes, Vanessa, thank you. Okay, please let those ideas keep coming in, and we'll move on to our second strategy for doing social studies.
All right. Second strategy, one of my favorites, storytelling. Teachers guide the learning through narratives, histories, personal stories, and authentic representations of experience. Now, the bottom line is we're trying to bring to life the cold, hard facts And the more we can weave stories into that conversation and make those connections, the greater likelihood that they're going to stick. And as Cheryl mentioned, that might be reading a story. It might be reading a passage from a story. And I'm going to share an example of that in just a little bit. But when we share stories, we learn to listen with our heads and hearts. This is incredibly important. Oftentimes I'll teach a little lesson here using Japanese, but the kanji for hearing is a kanji of a gate with an ear in the middle, and the sound comes in, hits your ear, and you hear. But the kanji for listen has the ear in it, but it also has the mind's eye and the heart. 3-part kanji puts together, which is to listen. Both words are pronounced kiku, to hear or to listen. And as the young girls that taught this to me back in 1978 said, in the end, we're the only ones who know whether we are hearing you or listening. And when we share stories, we want to invite people to listen and build that empathy and understanding for the experience that people are going through as best they can. So one of the examples we've chosen here is grade 3. Who are the Albertans? Who are Albertans? And students relate diversely to Alberta's Western identity as the learning outcome. And so we look to see where we can personalize this wherever possible. What's your story? What's a story? Teacher, student, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. In some classrooms, you have a host of students who are the first of their family to be here. They came, even though they're in grade 3, they came from somewhere else, and they've not been in Alberta for maybe in some instances just a few days. I remember when we had a bunch of students that came to Grand Prairie from the former Yugoslavia area, and they had a story that was different from my story as third generation Albertan. And then of course there are others who have more generations than that. My wife is I think a 5th generation Albertan. So we're getting multiple perspectives, and we're learning about their experiences as we go through with that. This is a place where, just as a quick example, can you please switch your screen view back to presentation? Cheryl, are you seeing the screen the way?
Yeah, I'm just I'm writing Christy a message, so keep going, Rick. Thank you.
We're rolling. All right. So I want to share an example of a story that can be used in multiple grades. It comes from this book, Valley of the Bird Tail, that is written by Andrew Stovall-Snyderman and Douglas Sanderson. And as social studies teachers, impetuously, I read this book 6 weeks after it came out, and I put on Twitter when I still used Twitter, and it was called Twitter. Yeah, we've shared the slides. Cheryl, you're seeing the slides, aren't you?
Yeah, we're okay.
We're okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I put out on Twitter anyway, every social studies teacher, every teacher in Canada should read this book. I still stand by that, very much so. But inside that story, inside that book is a story, and I share this handout with folks. That's the story of Jim's run, which is basically a young boy who runs away from his residential school to run home. And in this sitting, I've got some things to do before, some introductory questions, and some questions to do after, and then the passage of the story for you to read to your students. Now you've got to do this grade appropriately, and all of the cautions and pieces of that nature are in there. But when we share this story, we have the opportunity to help our students kind of understand. Jim, this 12-year-old boy, runs home, and it's approximately 150 kilometers. And as you read this passage, he travels at 150 kilometers in 3 days and gets home. And so to try to help our students understand. I saw somebody was here from Grand Prairie, got this little, so I could type in Grand Prairie and it'll find it and draw a circle. And so it's giving me a circle of 130 kilometers or less, 130 to 150 kilometers, 150 to 180 kilometers, and all the communities that he would have to run to get home. And imagine that this is home. And we can zoom in on that a little bit. So if the residential school was in Grand Prairie, he could run all the way past Dawson Creek in order to get home. And that's what Jim did. And so it's just an opportunity to see and feel and make some connections and bring it back to you. This little interactive graphic piece was created through AI, actually. So that's an example of how we can use stories. Now,
Rick, I can also imagine students going out and, grade 3 students, they're 8 years old. Maybe they need to walk 2 kilometers or 3 kilometers to feel what that looks like, and and then use their emerging multiplication skills to think about what that distance would be like, in addition to seeing that visual, because we want to make them as, using lots of different materials and trying to make it as active as possible so that they can feel some of those pressure points that help us to make connections and learn.
isn't that a great example, Cheryl? I think the rule is still something like 2 kilometers before you get a bus ride to school. Am I wrong? For those of you that are busing. So, if you have to walk to school and back every day, like I did uphill both ways, yes, Christine, beautiful example. You could tie it into Terry Fox run, because I know he was running in excess of 20, 30 kilometers a day when he was able, right? So that's kind of the deal there. Yeah, any thoughts anybody else has that they'd like to share about sharing stories at your grade level or across the grades? We'd invite you to put those into the chat. Any other thoughts on your part, Cheryl?
Well, we're about to share out a curriculum implementation toolkit. And when it comes to stories, this toolkit has lists and lists of books, picture books, resources, websites, things that you can use. So hang on tight, we'll give you that toolkit at the end. So if you're looking for connected literature that will help us to bring this curriculum to life, please know that we're sharing some resources with you soon. And United Library Services is curating book lists. All of those are coming right away, so we can start to get those in place. And also, it's okay if it takes a little while to get the things that you want. It's not all going to happen by the first day, and that's okay. So all
you
right.
use your access to books, and wherever possible, pull your own stories into the classroom and invite the students to share their stories where they curriculum wise align, when they're comfortable to do so. Personalizing it really helps make that connection. Oh, look at that. I just said the word connection, and then here we go.
It's almost like you knew this slide was coming.
Oh.
Yeah.
So teachers guide students to connect to their personal experiences to support their understanding of local context and the world around them. Here we're really looking to, this is what happened here. How does this relate to you? Like, what has happened in your life that is like this? How can you make those connections? We use key concepts to support the transfer of knowledge to new challenges and opportunities. Now, some of this takes place before we introduce, have you had, and then you fill in the blank from there, an experience like, or where have you, and then go from there as part of introducing what you're going to discuss. And sometimes, of course, as you're experiencing the content in the course, students are going, oh, I know what that's like. That's like this. And let them bring that out, help them bring that out for the rest of the class. particularly when we're looking around the world, and as we move up our grades, you've got good diversity in your classroom, there are lived experiences inside your classroom that are not shared, that can help connect student lives by giving them the opportunity to make those connections. Anything further on that, show before I go to the example?
There are some great thinking routines that can support that kind of dialogue and conversation. And maybe it's you ask the students to, this makes me think of, this, read them a story or have them play a role and then say, this makes me think of a time where I was put into a place where I was new, and have them talk to other students or walk around the room so that they can get moving and start to feel an opportunity to articulate and practice their communication skills, so that they can really have that chance to share and know that they're being heard. Mm-hmm.
Even in something as simple as my house, your house, but done in a manner where it's like, well, at my house we do this, at my house we do this, and coming to appreciate that the differences are not a bad thing, they're an enriching thing from the outset. So the example we have is from grade 6. How can history provide insight into modern democracies? So students relate the foundational principles of democracy to government systems throughout time and history. And here we have opportunity again. If there's diversity in your classroom, it certainly helps. And if not, then it's important for us to introduce diversity. We might be guilty of taking the personal rights and freedoms that we have just a little bit for granted, just a little bit, when we cast our eyes to things that are happening out and around the world. We might have students who are in our classroom who have come here because they had none of, or very few of, the rights and freedoms that we have. And so looking at those differences and making those connections are there, as well as drawing on the heritage that we each have. As we said, really, in our land acknowledgement, I inherited, and the rights and responsibilities of the treaty. Everyone who moves to Canada ultimately inherits the rights and responsibilities of the treaty. So let's see what we can do to thrive by recognizing and giving room and space for these pieces to come into our class and our teaching. All right. Anybody have any thoughts they want to drop in the line about connecting? Love it. Yes. Vanessa, thank you.
Reasonable limits is definitely listed in the curriculum as and would be a good conversation. It's a good, being able to co-create the criteria for students. What does reasonable mean with regard to rights and freedoms? What does that allow us to do? What does that prevent us from doing? And where is that line? So great idea, Vanessa. Thanks for that connection. The next instructional powerful strategy that we really wanted to highlight today was the idea that when doing social studies, we want to develop competencies. So competencies were originally brought forth into the Alberta curriculum in 2013. And perhaps you know that they have still, they've carried through and they still exist in these updated versions of curriculum. The competencies are those enduring attributes and dispositions that we need students to carry forward into the future. It's things like communication, critical thinking, managing information, which is more important than ever. We want them to be able to be problem solvers. We want them to be creative. And so in social studies, this is a wonderful opportunity to really activate and pull all of these pieces together. So the example that we have selected, and there are so many in this one, it's ways that we can, I chose an example from grade 2 out of the citizenship organizing idea, where the question is, how can people come together to make decisions? The learning outcome, students examine competencies for democratic discussions and decision making. There are others that can work. It doesn't have to have the word competency in the learning outcome, but this one just really does. So we were thinking about, imagine creating a compelling age-appropriate community issue. We have money for our playground. Should we plant trees or build a new playground structure? We have money for the library. What kind of books do we need? Do we need more fiction? Do we need nonfiction? Do we need computers? Do we need visuals, artifacts? What should we do? Or maybe it's something like, you know what, we have there's so much paper towel waste in our school, or the garbage on the playground is collecting. I'm thinking about grade 2 examples. Or maybe there's an issue that's really bothering them. Maybe there's an illness of a friend in the a student in the class or in the community that you want to learn a little bit more about so that you can do something to help. There's lots of age appropriate issues that can really that 7-year-olds can tap into. And so by building the ideas and talking to students giving them these ideas, having them brainstorm some questions or some ideas on their own, and then having them pair up to talk about them, and then sharing it out into a larger group where you're mapping out the pros and cons and then co-creating a plan. These are things that young students need to see modeled for them, and they get to be participants in taking action. And in doing so, they were managing information, practicing their communication skills. And you can even say to them, I'm listening for, what do you think about this? Or could you make my idea even better by adding something to it? So modeling the kind of talk that is used in a collaborative group will help to bring these about in your students. And what are some of the ways that you have found that can develop decision making or problem solving with your students at any grade? Would you please drop some ideas in the chat? And Rick, do you have anything you'd like to add about this one?
Right now in Alberta, I would love to consider how we might better teach that if you're in the minority opinion on something, you live in a democracy and you still need to get along and move along. It's a little bit like if I lose the discussion, then I want to leave, or I want to resist the advance, the progress that the vast majority have voted to support, or even in our democracy, the simple majority have voted to do, and it didn't go my way. How do I deal with that? And I think that maybe at the young grades, we've got to explore that, so that at the upper grades, we've got a little handle on it. And in the adult grades, the rest of life, we can figure it out.
Absolutely. Critical 21st century skills. You're right, Jessica. What happens if you vote and your choice isn't selected? What do you do with those big feelings, right? It's all about regulation and managing emotions. And we're always teaching and working through these things, which are important competencies. So don't be afraid to carve out time in your day, because I know you're already doing that. So just feel seen and honored and affirmed that you're doing the right thing when you spend time specifically addressing competencies and the development of these skills and attributes. Okay, the next one we wanted to talk about is engaging with real world, real people, and real artifacts wherever possible. These are often called primary sources, and they're a gift where possible. And honestly, with advances in technology, we can actually try to recreate some of these as better than ever before. And so as we have more time with this new curriculum, we can start to source museums and heritage centers where we can borrow artifacts that students can touch or view. We can use photographs, we can use virtual tours of museums and different places. Can we go to the next slide, please, Rick? And Yeah, Telespark has some, I'm sure, but it's also about things that we can do. You can actually zoom in people from around the world into your classroom to talk about things. You can ask them those questions. What does it feel like? I have a friend who takes people on expeditions to the Antarctica, and he is like an explorer if there's ever one. His house is filled with artifacts. We need to bring him in to share some of those experiences and artifacts from his travels. And so the digital human library is one resource. Anywhere that you can possibly curate and have students bring in artifacts that might be connected, or looking at high quality images, and we'll keep on building some of those things together. Oh, yes. Inviting people in, having those first person primary sources, or getting students out into the community. We don't always have to do the canned field trips that are offered by great places like Telespark. Not to say there's anything wrong with those programs, but just that sometimes we can go out into the community to serve the purpose of the outcome specifically that you're looking at, to say, we are really curious about what it's like to when you get stuck in, on a canoe trip, and you're facing terrible weather and you're trying to carry a load that's overwhelming your travel devices and your canoe. What does that feel like? What happens? Well, how do you problem solve those kinds of things? And so, whatever it happens to be, we really want to encourage you to reach out to all your sources, put texts and messages into your newsletters, try to curate some artifacts and people who have connections. The example that we pulled for you today comes from grade 5. And this one relates to the organizing idea again of time and place. And this one's about ancient civilizations. Now, we might not have, access to all of the tools and pieces left from these ancient civilizations, like coins and pottery, but you could also connect with museums and virtual museums to get access to some of these things, or replicas that can help the learning. Um, the learning outcome is about examining ancient civilizations. So if we take a look at the verb examine, we have some tools here. And Rick, if you don't mind, please, could you click on looking at art and looking at objects? This is a document that I learned from working with the Open Minds and Campus Calgary programs, where it's an experiential learning that takes students off campus for a week at a time. And one of those things is really focusing in on observation skills so that they can enhance their drawing, their questioning techniques, and also their descriptive writing. So these prompts can help get you going if you have an object or an image. Something when students are like, I don't know, it looks like a rock, and you feel like the responses are kind of flat. It's when you can activate some of these questions to say, well, let's look a little bit closer, and we'll pull out the magnifying glasses and we'll think about the design, and well, what's the story of this pot? Where did it come from? And whose home did it live in? What were those people like? And it links again to making connections to their own lives, and also to the stories that might be, what story lives inside this bowl? How many dinner tables did it sit on? Or maybe that was a dinner floor. How does that work? Who made it? Did they make it with love? Oh, Christine's an open mind journal questioning too. Yay! This tool, I didn't write these. I have used them and loved them since 1996. And I know that that tells you how old I am, but that's where it started. And I think that it still holds true for really activating and getting students involved in the learning in an emotional way. So, oh, thank you, Lisa. And Rick, thanks for that. So just coming back to our slide then, when you have a second there, Rick, thank you. Um, Please also, if you're having trouble finding some of these things, reach out to us. You don't have to live this alone. We will do what we can to collaborate with you, to find those community connections, to find route maps and to build things. And I think it could be really exciting. So let's do as much as we can with this to try to bring it alive for students.
Cheryl, I dropped in the chat, you have 22 to 38 students in your class. I hope you're not in a class of 38 grade threes, but you have these students, they have parents, they have grandparents, and you talk about, here we have the bullet community connections, inviting museum curators. Today in our group, we have a museum educator with us, mentioned earlier in the chat, archaeologists or university professors to share their expertise. It strikes me that there are lots of people who have expertise in different areas who would not be in that list and definitely would not necessarily be a university professor, but still have artifacts, or going back to stories, they might have artifacts and stories that can help with the understanding of what it is you're talking about. And so asking your students about their families and their grandmas and their grandpas and cool stories they've heard from might, or developing a document that you could send home to the parents. Who in your family line might be interested in or have stories or artifacts that can help us enrich our experience this year as we study X, Y, and Z. Gives you a chance to share with them what you're working on and getting them involved right from the outset.
Sounds great. Thank you. And what are your ways? There's been a few things in the chat. Oh yes, I worked with an art teacher who made clay dinosaur bones and then buried them in the schoolyard so that students could uncover them as archaeologists. Amazing. It sounds like Sheila has a similar experience. Looking through the lens, oh, place-based pedagogy, absolutely. Thank you. And this also means like going out wherever possible. We talk about getting out of your classroom. I know that it's a challenge, and field trips can be overwhelming and expensive and all of those types of things. So find ways that you can find a balance of finding local things that are easy to get to, pairing up with other classes so that you can bring in two teachers to handle all of the things at the same time. But these are really opportunities to make the learning real and have it stick with your students. So thank you.
How many people do we have here from Edmonton, I wonder? I just am thinking about the river walk that I took with Dr. Dwayne Donald at the University of Alberta. I know he can't do that for every elementary school, but still, that was sharing his learnings and understandings about, I see trade route maps on this, but the entire process of gathering to trade with Fort Edmonton and gathering to trade with each other as they gathered along the North Saskatchewan River. Another resource, I know that hits back into university professor, but that's his title, not who he is. And so lots of opportunities there. What fun. This Sherwood Park. There you go. Close enough to get to that river.
Right.
And there's a beautiful river trail along there. Sherwood Park to Fort Saskatchewan. Pardon me. The last of our 6 items is to take action. Every curriculum we look at, we want to look at, okay, what do we want our students to do, actually act upon from the learning and through the sharing and everything else that they've done. So we use thinking routines. Certainly we invite everyone to be intimately familiar with Project Zero. If you have not heard of that before or had an opportunity to go to Project Zero, it's got a wealth of thinking routines that have been developed in part by Dr. Ron Richert and his team in terms of making thinking visible. We're happy to drop the link into the chat. Create representations, track changing perspectives, collaborate to activate our collective strengths, and take actions as responsible citizens. So what kind of actions might that be? Well, citizenship is a organizing idea that stretches from K through 12. And so the learning outcomes that show up in citizenship most often are an easy match for taking action. We've gone to kindergarten for this one. Children relate cooperation and collaboration to achieving a common goal. So consider a real life problem such as trash being left on the playground or mitts getting lost in the boot room. Never happens.
Mr. Gilson, you're acting like this is not a common thing. Let me tell you,
Oh,
teach
no, no, no,
kindergarten.
no. I'm acting like I said, I have 6 kids.
Yes, yes,
Where are your mitts? I
yeah.
lost them. But don't
You
you
need
have that string
systems.
that goes through your coat and comes to the other mitt and they're attached to you?
Mhm.
And yeah, we know that was a been there, done that.
Yes,
um,
smile of affirmation. Yes.
yeah. Trash being left on the playground. My thought went to 1,400 students eating in the cafeteria at my high school in Grand Prairie, and not always cleaning it up.
Yeah, that's right. Mhm.
And how that turned, by the way, when I invited our teachers to not say, hey, pick that up, but to say, hey, can you help me pick that up? And the entire culture changed. Ask them to bring their best idea to the whole class, discuss the pros and cons. So we're still getting back into that whole democratic conversation piece and identify the most creative solution, or maybe a solution that is the easiest to implement. Not a bad place to start. The most creative might be the really great thing to do, but we got to build some citizenship muscles by getting a few easy things and a few wins. We get some easy stuff that we can build confidence. Remember when we did? Oh yeah, well now we're going to do, yeah, but that's 3 times harder. Yes, but look at the muscles you've developed in this. So you can do it. So try it, check back in with the students and see how their plan turned out. And I love that notion of, hey, couldn't we at least? And so we tried that. Okay, how'd that work? Well, it worked really good for me, but I hated it. You got 2 different students with total different experiences. Well, what would have made it better for you? And having those kinds of conversations. Well, we didn't get to deal with my problem. Okay, let's deal with your problem next and work our way through it, which again teaches that whole majority minority, but you're still part of. You're all in the circle. Let's see what we can do to move it forward. Um, I I think that this is obviously a life skill. Taking action, and particularly taking action in citizenship. I was only partially kidding. They had the ballot or the petition to stay in Canada signing day here in Lethbridge. Might have been Monday. Today's Wednesday. It was Monday. It was a beautiful hot day. People were lined up around and around. There was like 14 different lineups. And it was quite a lot of fun to stand in line under the sun and visit with people in front and behind as we waited for our turns to sign that very important document, in my opinion. I'll just put that out there. That might be a majority opinion, it might be a minority opinion, but to sign it. And as I got up to signing, there was still 40 minutes left, and they only had a couple of sheets. And she was quite at the table I was at. As I said, there was 14 different tables or thereabouts. And I said, well, there's a Staples just over here. Do you want to give me that one? And I'll run over there and make some more copies. So I ran over and made another 80 copies and distributed it across the tables before I went for dinner. It's just an opportunity to exercise your muscles. That's what taking action is all about, not theory, doing. Any other thoughts out there?
One thought that I was thinking is wherever possible, if you can integrate curriculum from more than one subject, it can be really efficient. And I know how challenging it is to feel like you're doing all of the things that you want to do in a classroom. One of the science outcomes from kindergarten is that children explore movement of objects, humans, and other animals. And so you could give students a challenge that is related to moving objects in curves or zigzags, and also assess them on this learning outcome in social studies while creating that task. So if you can double dip, so to speak, that can be a really efficient way of looking at developing those actions. And also linking it in wherever possible. So I think people are probably really excited to see, well, to have access to those documents. And so one last resource we would want to share with you prior to that, sorry, could we just go back to those action posters, please?
Yeah.
Um, when we think about learning and action as being a verb, let's think about some of the things ways that we can frame our questions, and that taking action isn't always, hosting a bake sale or doing a walkathon. It doesn't always mean that you have to do something huge. Action can also sometimes be things like, I changed a little bit today. I used to think this about democracy or about Alberta's identity, and now, based on this new information, I'm thinking something differently. Um, Maybe I have taken some action, like maybe my awareness for different people's perspectives has grown. So when I see or hear something from my family or out in the community, and I might think, whoa, I don't think that was really listening to other people's perspectives. That's evidence that we can use as teachers. Have you empathized a little bit more than you had in the past? Or perhaps it's really about showing more respect or more care for a group of people or for an idea or for a perspective. And so if this is a link here, action ideas to use as reflections. If you like these posters, you can take them and use them. But taking action is a really important avenue for doing social studies, and really it fits into all of your content areas. So, and lastly, we want to share with you the our team at APLC has been working throughout the summer since the curriculum was released in the spring, to create an implementation toolkit for you. And how we do social studies is one section in the toolkit. And so you can, thanks Rick for opening that up. And there's the link to it. Oh, we should have put, there is a QR code. I should make a QR code for that one next time, but there's the link to it in the chat. Thank you. And when you get in, we'll just do a quick little browse through so that you can see it. And we'll also give you a chance to have this. It will be posted on the APLC website soon. It's not there yet. You can access it through this link. But in this toolkit, you'll find some architecture information, some great videos that talk about concept progressions. There are some planning templates that you might use. We're also working collaboratively with lots of different districts. So, Edmonton Catholic is working on curriculum crates. There's different resources like that will help you. And these tools and templates are intended to support the design of learning for you as you're working to get to know this new curriculum. And remember, it's okay to start a little bit at a time, and do your best to make it feel manageable. We've had a lot of information and new curricula in the last couple of years. So what you'll see there, how we do social studies. We will double check those links. Is there something missing there, Deanna? We'll have to double check. We've been working quickly, so I hope that we can get everything to you. You'll also find that there's sessions in social studies through the symposium, and so a lot of the other pieces that you will see in this toolkit will be presented during other sessions. So let's just open up the group to any questions or wonderings that you have.
Let's check on that. Thanks, Deanna. I have dropped the how we do social studies PDF into the chat So you can click on that and download that automatically to your screen or to your desktop. My wife is not home and someone is ringing the doorbell. Anyway, we'll ignore that for right now. So I could open that, but again, inside that document, you find examples of all 6 for each grade, kindergarten through grade 6. Now we do have a few minutes left. We have the ability definitely to open breakout rooms that you could choose if you want to go to a room to deal with just one of the topics and talk about that one topic, or we can simply go to opening or answering any questions. We do need to share with you this link with the survey before folks leave, and there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of an extra long lunch. But if you could click on this link, which we'll put in the
And maybe after we
chat as well.
the survey link in the chat, Rick, could you please pull up the one pager document that how we do social studies again?
Yep, I can. I'll come back on my slides. So in here,
the slide deck and the resources will be emailed out to all the registrants from the session. So yes is the answer, Ingrid. Yeah. So if you scroll down to page 2 of this document, you will see that we have each of these grades takes you to another document that gives you an example from each one. This is grade 4, and it goes through the 6, the roles, the stories, the connections, and these are just some of the possibilities. We hoped it could be a springboard for your good ideas. Sharon, we'd love to hear from you. Do you want to pop on your mic?
Yes, thanks. You shared with us a document earlier, Indigenous Culture-Based Learning in Alberta Curriculum.
Yes.
And it's primarily Cree, and I know that's for the division for the treaty areas more to the north of the province. Is there something for the Blackfoot?
Good question. One that we've asked as well. Go ahead, Rick. You wanted to have
Sharon, I'll speak to that a little bit because, of course, I'm down here just a stone's throw from Kainai. We've had conversations with the Southern Office, which is what we now call SAPDC, but the Southern Office and our advisory committee. And when the folks on that Indigenous First Nations Advisory Committee saw the work that had been done by Jason and the others up in Treaty 7 lands, they said, you know, we need to roll up our sleeves here and provide a Blackfoot perspective. And that's exactly right. And we're supporting them in beginning that work. Now, what you see on that website took hours and hours and hours. And there's a passion piece there. And so we've got now similar people motivated and interested in creating a Blackfoot parallel, if you will, but that's going to take time.
Yes, of course. Thank you. A tip off maybe to you too is I'm part of Palliser School Division, and we do have an Indigenous person who works with central office there who helps integrate Indigenous culture into the schools too. So that might be a good person to tap into.
And is a member of the committee at our office.
Perfect.
So that works full circle, Sharon.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for your good question and for being here today.
Thank you.
I think what we'll do, everyone, is we will close out the recording for today, thanking all of the people who are catching us on that recording. And Rick and I will stay here for the next little while. I hope that you will find some use in these resources and ideas.